Welcome to Chronicles of Old Singapore. This is Dr Loh KS here, and I speak to people about their memories of old Singapore before it became a global city. And the person that we have here returning to the podcast today is Mr. C. Kunalan. Welcome back, Mr. K.
Thank you very much, Karthik.
Today we don't have any hiccups over the technology, hopefully so far.
Yep.
So very happy to have Mr. K back here. Of course, last week we had a really nice chat over the better known part of your Mr. K your career, which is the racing and the sprinting. So this is not the end. I know I was always going to come back to you to talk about what has also been, just as important to you. As you said, so much of your life was given to teaching. And this is the lesser known part, I guess, of your public life. Mr. K, so I think you are wearing the same t-shirt as you did. Is it the same one?
This is the one, yes.
Can you show us?
This is DS. Can you see?
A bit higher. We can't see the crest. From each is best, DS.
Yes.
What are the four symbols there? Can you tell us?
Whoa.
Is that a microscope?
Yeah, microscope, the first one.
Do you mind lifting it a bit so that we can see it? Just lift the shirt up a bit.
Yeah, I have forgotten.
That's right. No one has asked you, right?
I hope the boys, the past students from Danantech are watching this, and then they will fill you up and explain about the crest.
Hopefully, they might also have forgotten. So there is a microscope. Is that right?
Yes.
And then what else is there?
Yeah, I really cannot. I can't remember.
Can I see?
Yeah.
A bit higher.
Since it's a technical school, can it be some kind of technical things there?
Definitely, I think. Okay, I think we'll just ask the audience to tell us, and reply to the podcast what those four things are.
Sure.
And on the other side, what is on the other side?
What's on the other side? Can you see?
From each is best. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Where did you get this T-shirt?
I think there was a gathering one day, and then they had made these T-shirts, and people could buy them, or I think some of us were given a couple of them. There's one without a collar and one with a collar.
Okay.
So I thought I'll wear this one for this part.
That's very nice. I'm sure they will appreciate this. So, Mr. K, I want to ask you about your childhood and growing up. So you said before in the last podcast that you were like a village boy, right? Running through the races. So where was it that you grew up?
We moved from Johor when I was, I think, about 2 or 3 years old. And my father had a job in the Malayan Breweries. That's where they brewed tiger beer. And this was along Alexandra Road, directly opposite the Gilman Barracks. The British forces, one of the HQs there. So that's where I grew up from childhood days. In the living quarters provided by the Tiger Brewery.
Right. So these were actually staff quarters.
Staff quarters, yes.
Made of concrete or brick.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Very modern.
Yeah. Could you describe how they were?
Actually, there were two locations. The first few years, it was in the same area, but this was like a bungalow. But there were two two residences together, side by side. And then, so there was one big room, a kitchen, and a veranda. And the bathroom and toilet were located outside. So, and it was a shared facility. So a few, uh, I think two or three neighbors shared that one toilet and bathroom. So in the kitchen, it was quite big. There was enough space for stoves. And of course, at that time, we had a charcoal and wood stove. We didn't have any electrical stoves. And also an area with a tap where you could wash things and wash clothes and whatever. And there was enough space to put a dining table. And so that's how I grew up with my parents and my two sisters.
What was the address? Do you remember?
Yeah, something Alexandra Road.
Alexandra
I
Road.
can't remember.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't remember. I should, isn't it?
And your neighbors were all employees of the
Also,
Malayan Breweries.
all the neighbors were employees of the Malayan Breweries.
Okay.
And in my in this first location, I remember one of my neighbors. He was a very that his parents also were working in the brewery, but he grew up there, and he became a very famous football player for Singapore, and his name was Mahat Ambu, and I'm sure some people will know his name.
I
Mahat
don't.
Ambu.
So it's before my time,
no,
right?
yeah, this is long ago in the 50s and very, very early 60s.
Okay.
And then after that, we moved to the brand new quarters that the breweries had built. And many of us moved there. And it was a very, very big, long setup of homes. They were all divided into sections, and each section had six homes, and the ones with the six homes were meant for the lower category workers, and for the more the the white collar people had two sections, and so that's where my last few years in Alexandra was lived in these quarters.
So the new one was also along Alexandra Road.
Yes.
Okay.
The entrance was along Alexandra Road also.
Right. Did you have a happy childhood in these two quarters?
I think I should say yes. Very happy childhood. Had some neighbors who I grew up with, and we were always friends. And the activities were always seasonal. When it was a top season, we learn how to play tops and fight tops. Then marble season, and the kite season, and so like this, life went on like that. And I can remember me growing up here. We always had a dog, and my duty was to bring the dog out early in the morning for his morning business, bring him back, and then one more time in the evening for his evening business, bring him back. So the dog was there, and our quarters, our living quarters was next to it. There was a patch of green patch, and there we grew plants and flowers and guava tree and jackfruit trees.
You mentioned marbles, kites, playing. Were there sports facilities in the area?
No, there were no sports facilities. But I must tell you this: right at the before these quarters uh, started, just before that there was a patch of grass next to a what do you call this? This was a sewage a sewage system.
Mm-hmm.
So they had their own sewage system. So all the sewage from these quarters would flow through the pipes and come to this sewage station, and there it would be filtered, etc., etc., and finally the water will flow into the drain into at Alexandra Road. But next to it was a grass patch, and I remember we played football there. And then later on, I had a very famous neighbor. His parents worked in the brewery, but they were in the Anchor Brewery.
Mm.
But they didn't have enough space in the quarters at Anchor Brewery. So this family, the Nonis family came over to our side, and they were my next next door neighbor. Uh, Next to the grass patch was their their two rooms, and these brothers, they were so famous. They were SJI boys, and the eldest one, Douglas Nonis, he just passed away 2 years ago. Douglas Nonis, he played football and hockey for Singapore. And his younger brother also became a very famous player, but his fame was he represented Singapore in darts. Also, so he was Leonard Nonis. So there's Douglas Nonis, Leonard Nonis, and they were both SGI boys. They were a couple of years older than I was, and I had great respect for them. But that was that neighbor. So this is
Interesting
live at
times,
the
yeah.
time.
Did you ever go to Malayan Breweries? Did you ever
Oh,
visit?
I walked through the Malayan breweries every day on the way to school.
Yeah.
It was a shortcut. And I guess, because the guards knew who we were, so we walked through the Malayan breweries from one entrance to the other exit, and then from there on to school. That was when we were in the new quarters. When we were in the old quarters, we walked out through the compound and then uh, walked down the slope through a village and came out to Pasir Panjang Road and then walked to school from there.
Yeah. What could you see from the outside? Could you see, the bottles of beer, the
Yeah. Okay.
operations?
So and I'm walking through the brewery, and as I'm walking through the brewery, uh, I see everything, all that's on the outer part. So there are um, boxes coming through, and there were all these bottles, uh, the tiger beer bottles, and then a truck will come in with the empty ones, and then they'll unload it, and then another truck will come where they will load the ready-made beers. And so, and as you walk through the brewery, you get the smell of beer all the time. So I'm not sure whether by the time I got to school, I was drunk.
So on one side, the smell of beer, the other side, smell of sewage. Yeah. So you say your school was the Pasir Panjang English School, right? That was
yeah,
quite
that
nearby.
yeah, that's a primary school.
That's a primary
Yeah,
school.
I always thought about measuring the distance. But I suppose now we could easily uh, find the school. It was just after Pepys Road. There was another road called Yu Siang Road. Yewsiang Road, and you go in for about 200 meters, and then the Pasir Panjang English School was there. So Yu Siang Road. And
Mm.
so from my place, from Alexandra, we walked to Yu Siang Road.
And subsequently, you went to the secondary school, right? Pasir Panjang
Yes,
Secondary School.
yes. And the school building is still there, but
Mm.
it is not used as a school, but it is used by the Ministry of Education as an outdoor adventure center.
I forgot to ask you, going back a bit earlier, the living quarters, the staff quarters, both of them, are they still there?
Oh no, all gone.
They're all gone. What are they now?
There are some commercial buildings.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I passed it many times, but I can't recall uh, the names of those
Mm-mm.
commercial units now.
It's a pity, right? Because they were modern buildings.
They were what?
They were modern buildings, right?
Uh,
They might have been conserved, and put to use.
oh yeah, it would have been very very nice if they had kept parts of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but many things just went.
Yeah. Okay. Back to the schools, right? So you want to tell us about your academic performance in the schools?
Uh, I think in short,
Yeah.
very bad
Mm. What happened?
because I'm not sure. Um, every time I brought the report card home, um, I would get a scolding and caning because the results were so bad. So there was always caning, crying, and everything else. And I remember even once, uh, we had made some kites, very beautiful kites. I think the Malays called it uh, uh, layang. Layang is kite, bulan, moon, because they were this size, big, 2 layers, and I remember I had put it under the chair, and one day when I had brought the results home, and I remember my parents were so angry with the result, and I remember my mother pulling out the kite and smashing it to shreds
Wow.
because my results were so bad. But that was how my results were, and uh, I also like to say that I failed uh, many subjects all the time. The worst was mathematics, and I remember not passing mathematics even once in primary school, except when I was in P5. In P5, the form teacher, I don't know, she was such a wonderful teacher. Her name is Bertha Neo, and I don't know why, because of being in a class, I passed mathematics because of such a wonderful woman. And then when I went to P6, I was in the middle class. There were three P6s, the better one, then the middle one, and then a not so good one. And I was in the middle section. And the teacher was such a strict man. His name was Jaya Singham. And Jaya Singham was so fierce that that made me pass my mathematics. But that was the end of my passing mathematics. When I went to secondary school, I didn't pass mathematics even once.
Mm.
And on my O level certificate, it's not even recorded. Although I sat for mathematics, the results were worse than F9. That it did not go on the certificate. And there were a few subjects like that I had worse than F9, I think, and it did not go on the
Right.
school certificate.
Well, can I ask you
Cambridge.
then, what was your best subject?
I didn't have a best subject. I think the best mark was uh, P5. Uh, the marks are given as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, and 8 and 9 are failed. Okay, 6 and 7 are passed. And that's all I got. One subject, 5, and then all the other subjects, 6 and 7.
Right.
So I was not very academically inclined.
And subsequently, as a teacher, you had to teach mathematics.
Yes. That's so strange, isn't it? Huh? So my first 5 years was in a primary school, and I managed to teach the subjects that I had to teach. So, but they were primary school level, so I think I managed quite well. But when I went after the 5 years, then when I went to teach in the secondary school, um, I was given a class to be a form teacher. At the same time, I was given the mathematics textbook, and they said you have to teach these subjects. So I'm teaching English and mathematics in my class, and and so I remember this very clearly. Every time I would spend a lot of time on going through every chapter, every new chapter that I'm going to teach in mathematics, and I'll do every sum there, and then I can face the class, and I could do every problem sum in that book. The book was called Malayan Mathematics, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, Volume 4, Volume 5. And I started with Volume 2. So that was how I became a mathematics teacher also.
Right. I mean,
And then I realized, hey, it's quite simple.
yeah.
Why did I fail all those years in school?
Did you? Can you tell us a story of how you became a teacher? I mean, that was not your aim, wasn't it?
No, yes. At that time, I think for me at least, I didn't have any aims. My father was looking at this. Uh, my father was making sure that I was on track for something. Okay, so this is what happened when I was in that in I left school in 1959. The whole of 1960, I was too young to start working, and so this is what I did. My father put me in a night school. This night school was in a village. It was run by a Malay family, and they had type, type, typing and shorthand. And so my father put me in typing and shorthand classes in the evening. So I learned to type and I learned to do shorthand also. That was my father was thinking that I would become a clerk. Um, then uh, so that 1 year I did all that. At the same time, because I was not in school, I was not working. One of my friends with whom I played football twice a day in the village. This uh, friend of mine, he would pull me along to go to a few houses in Gilman barracks where the British forces people stayed, and we would do gardening for a few dollars. So that was part of the day. Part of the day was spent playing football. Part of the day was spent doing gardening and earning a few dollars. And the evening was spent doing night classes, shorthand and typewriting. And then when the O-level results came out, the owner of the night school, he approached me and he said, hey, you now have your Cambridge certificate. Would you want to teach in our school? Can you imagine? He's asking me, a 16, 17-year-old, to teach in his night school. So I said, what am I going to teach? He said, you teach English. And there was a class for adults. These men, um, some of them were Malays, some Indians, and they were all working in the Gilman barracks. They were all working for the British forces, and they needed to have good English. And so I was their English teacher for those few months. And the school was so kind. They said, okay, you don't have to pay for your shorthand and typewriting classes. And because you are going to teach for us. And if we have any spare money, we will give that to you too. And I remember this. Some months I would get as much as $30,
Mm.
$20 to $30. And that was big money in those days. But so that was how 1960 went. And then my parents bought this place here. I remember you came to this place here.
Yeah.
This is at Jalan Arnab along Patterson Road. And we moved here in late 1960. And in 1961, I became a teacher. And it was called a temporary teacher. That was the post. I was untrained, but I am in a school teaching for 1 year.
Right.
That was my first life as a teacher.
So that school is Tiong Bahru Primary School, right? That's your first school.
My first school.
Uh, so maybe before we can talk about the individual schools, what is your kind of teaching philosophy and teaching method, and did you have to change it over the years?
Yes, I think there were many parts that I had to change. One was the aspect of disciplining students. At that time, we could cane students. And of course, now you're not allowed to touch the students at all. But in those days, anything wrong, whack with a ruler or with a cane. And I hope if there are any Tiong Bahru students of those years, I hope you forgive me for caning you.
Yeah, you're probably forgiven. So many years already.
And I do meet some of these students whenever my wife and I we go to Tiong Bahru Market twice a week, and while we are sitting in the food court, somebody will come up and then say who they are, and then we will have a chit chat about the times that we spent in Tiong Bahru school.
In terms of delivery of lessons, in terms of organizing the lesson, did you have like a methodology or a technique?
Yes, we had a textbook, and then we also had a huge book, and they call it the record book. It was about this long, this wide, and every day you wrote the date, and then you wrote the subject that you're teaching and the contents, how you're going to teach it, the methods of teaching it, and then you go to the next subject, and you wrote that, and that record book has to be given to the principal's office every week. So once a week, the principal goes through the record book, and then she or he will sign and then return it to us, and then we'll continue with our teaching and recording of our work. And I remember this so clearly, and I remember my colleagues all had to do the same thing, and sometimes I would get help from the colleagues if I didn't know how to teach a certain topic. I would ask them for help.
Yeah. At Tiong Bahru and at Danan, how was teaching like, in those days in the 60s and the 70s?
what can I say?
I mean, like, how were the students like in those days?
Yeah, I think for my secondary school, many of the students were they came in after passing their PSLE the second time or third time around. So they were a bit older, and because it was a technical school, the main subject was technical. So they could either go into woodwork or metalwork. And then later, a few years later, they introduced basic electricity also. So we had three technical subjects, but I was their academic teacher. So I would teach the English and the maths part, and then they will go for their respective classes. And so we always had a lot of movement of students um, when I was in secondary school.
I just want to do the Tiong Bahru one a little bit.
Sure.
So, as a temporary teacher, what were the things that you had to, like, learn, as a young teacher? What would the kind of formative experiences that you had?
You were thrown in the deep end.
Mm.
I remember the first day, the the principals, the senior teacher said, okay, here is your class register. Make sure you register the students' names and their addresses and everything else. And then here is the book list. Make sure you get the students to buy their books because there's a bookstore there. And then they said, here is your timetable for the class. And that's it. I'm brand new and I'm facing the class of 40 boys and girls. And yeah, I guess I must have pretended to be cool and know all the things to do. And of course, yeah, I think so. At that time, you had to act a little bit, I think. Uh, and so I remember preparing everything, going to class, teaching, and so forth. And also, there was disciplinary matters. I remember one occasion, uh, my next door, the teacher next in the class next door came to see me and she said, "Hey, look at the mess my classroom is." And I went to see her and went to see her classroom and the desk was all over the place and there was rubbish everywhere. And I was wondering what happened. And I found out that I think there were 6 boys who had come into that class and done this. I'm not sure why, but I remember the this teacher. She asked me to come and punish them, and so these 6 boys all stood in front of me, and I went. I remember doing this, and I hope these 6 boys who are who are from that class remember this and also forgive me because I gave them each one tight slap,
Wow.
slap. And I also I could feel my hand aching because of the slaps. And uh, so I remember that occasion also in Tiong Bahru Primary School. And of course, we also had another um, uh, momentous time was when the senior teacher by the name of Mr. Lai Hin Wing, he he was also the senior teacher at the same time the sports secretary. And once a year we would have a athletics meet, and we would go to the field that was just next door to us. It was the field that belonged to the University of Singapore Medical College. So the medical college was there, and there was a beautiful field. And uh, we would, I'm not sure whether we paid for it, but we will go over there. And this man, Mr. Lai Hin Wing, he showed me how to draw a track on the grass field. And we used first we made a triangle. We made a rectangle, and then put the two semicircles at the end of each uh, rectangle, and then you got a track. And he showed me how to make sure that the rectangle had right angles, and he taught me about Pythagoras theorem. I've heard of it in school, but I didn't know anything about it. But Mr. Lai Hin Wei, he showed me what Pythagoras theorem was all about, and I helped him to draw those the rectangle, and then we drew the radius from the diameter of the rectangle. We drew the radius and made 6 lanes on each side. So we drew our own track on the field, and I remember doing that 2 or 3 times before I left Tiong Bahru. I was so grateful for that experience. So another experience was, as soon as I had gone into the school, after the principal gave me all the registers and the booklets and everything else, she also said, you are also the teacher in charge of badminton. And the school had one badminton court. It was in the car park. So teachers would drive in the morning, and their cars will be there. And then when they leave, the afternoon teachers will be there and their cars will be there. So for me to conduct badminton, it was always after 6 p.m. And so after my classes, one more thing I must tell all listeners. In those years, 1 year you are in the morning school with a set of students and teachers. Then the following year, the whole set of students and teachers go to the afternoon session, and the afternoon session of teachers and students will come to the morning. The only common person was the principal, but there was 2 sessions. And so my first year there, I was in the afternoon session. So I had to wait until the the classes were over, and from 6 p.m. the court was clear because the teachers would have driven away, and then I would start badminton. And one court, then net, some rackets, some shuttles, and then there was a floodlight, one light to make the place lighted up so that we could do badminton. And I can't remember those students, they came, and then they had this, we had badminton. And let me tell you one thing else. The only badminton experience I had was when I played badminton with my sisters in the courtyard at home, in the small, narrow area. And then now I'm the teacher in charge of badminton. So I had to learn everything from scratch again, how to serve, how to do this. And I think the guy who was responsible for this was our school office boy. This guy, I think his name was Hassan. He stayed in living quarters on the school property. And so he was there all the time. And so he liked to play badminton, and he would come and join whenever I had badminton session. And I think I learned a few things from him. But I remember getting the boys and girls ready, and even going for a badminton tournament in a school somewhere. So that was that part of my CCA. And of course, the most momentous occasion of my being in Tiong Bahru School was my meeting up with my friend by the name of Lim IQ, because Lim IQ was the one who introduced me to athletics. And that is another story.